You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. You wanted it, you got it. A radio program that helps teach you options trading inside and out, basic to complex. This is Options Bootcamp. Whether you want to learn how to protect your portfolio, generate income, or even become a master of volatility, the Options Bootcamp drill instructors will break it all down for you. Now, let's get you into peak options trading shape. Here are your Options Bootcamp drill instructors.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Education Wednesday time for everyone's favorite, dare I say it, the premier options educational program. Yes, it is time once again for Options Bootcamp. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-scintillating network upon which so many of you are binging. Just want to thank all of you out there again for helping to contribute to make 2022 just an insane, bonkers record year. This January is our 16th anniversary of the launch of the Options Podcast and indeed the launch of our network. So to see so many of you flocking in to the network and indeed to this show last year just warms the old heart out there. Of course, the bandwidth bills, they're getting up there, but we like you folks up there nonetheless. So we'll keep cranking away content for you folks to enjoy. Remember, if you want more great content, I just came off an awesome pro Q&A session with Mr. Scott Nations, the creator of VolQ and the author of one or two or half a dozen options and volatility-oriented tomes out there. Always a fascinating guy to talk to. So if you'd like to participate in Q&A sessions like that, pick the brains of those people and other people from the world of options and derivatives, as well as, of course, get live access to this show, everything else we do, so you can heckle my cohort, the black-hatted one himself, live, as well as, of course, check out nearly 200-plus hours of shows we've already recorded and put up there for you to enjoy, as well as Options Oddities every week, where we break down the mad stuff going on in the world of options out there. All sorts of fun to be had. You know where to go. There's only one place. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go, listeners. As we go now to the options mecca outside of Chicago, right outside of Chicago, to the south there, a little paradise called Frankfurt, where we are joined once again by the black-hatted one himself, Mr. Dan Passarelli from Market Taker Mentoring. Mr. P, welcome back to Options Bootcamp, sir.
It's great to be back, Mark. Super excited. Looks like we have some great stuff to talk about today, and man, let's do it, baby.
Let's do it. Looks like the live folks are excited too. Option God says, woot, OBC time. So I guess that means he's excited, Dan. Looks like I forgot to mention our reviewer this week. Our 5-star review comes this week from BJM. Remember, if you like what you hear, all we ask is you do keep rating and reviewing out there on your on-demand platform of choice. It clearly does help new folks discover the show. BJM writes, thanks for so many teachings. Teachings, plural. I'm guessing maybe one of our overseas listeners, but we love you all. He says, learning a lot from this podcast. Thank you, BJM, and everyone else who takes the time to rate and review, leaving us 5 stars out there on your platform of choice, as it is time for us now to roll on into some basic training.
All right, Boot, it's time to get in line. What you're going to do is learn. You're going to learn how options work. Do you hear me? Yes, sir. You're going to learn options trading inside and out, basic to complex. There will be no failures. Do you hear me? Yes, sir. Pull in, prepare to learn. Yes, sir.
All right, everybody, welcome to the basic training, the portion of the show where we break down some basic options concept or technique or trade and explain how you can utilize it in your own portfolio. And you know what? Dan, stop me if you've heard about today's topic before. It might be a new one for you. In fact, maybe you might be unfamiliar with it completely. Have you heard of this concept that all the kids are talking about called zero DTE? Does that ring a bell, sir?
Heard of it. Of course I've heard of it, Mark. And I love it. I love it.
You do? Okay, well, good. I got the right guy for the show then. All right, good. Let's get into it, listeners. This is kind of the hot thing. We were just discussing this with Scott Nations. We had some questions along these lines on the Pro Q&A side. Dan and I have dabbled in this area in the past here. A lot to get to. If you have been living under a rocker, again, a lot of you are very new to the world of options. You have just discovered this show, maybe in the last couple of months or even the last couple of weeks. So concepts like zero DTE could be still far beyond you. We'll break it down a little bit. But the basic concept, listeners, zero DTE, what does that stand for? That stands for 0 days to expiration. What does that mean? That means the option you are buying or selling, it expires today. So you're basically putting on an expiration day trade. And you might say, well, what's the big deal? Who cares? That stuff's been around forever. I could have come in last year anytime pretty much, or a couple of years ago, and bought an option on expiration Friday and had to go out that same day or vice versa selling it. That's not a new concept. And you would be correct. It is not a new concept. Expiration day trading has existed since the dawn of options. Back when Dan and I were on the floor, of course, it was only once a month. So it was kind of a big deal. We had people who would only show up just to trade around those days. And other folks would get the heck out of Dodge. They didn't want to deal with it. I got a feeling the folks who would only show up, they're having a good time right now because it seems like everybody is showing up to that party. So what changed, listeners? Because you're right. You could have done this anytime over the last decade or so, really, with the advent of weeklies. You could have done an expiration trade pretty much every week. What changed is what the SIBO did earlier this year. Back in April of this year, they put out a circular on April 13th and said they're going to change the game a little bit. They already had weeklies expiring in the SPX on Monday and Wednesday and Friday. So again, you already had the lion's share of the week at your disposal. If you wanted to do a zero DTE trade on Monday or Wednesday or Friday, they had you covered. And SIBO decided earlier last year, April of last year, they were going to fill the gaps. They're going to launch some new contracts that just fill it up. So they launched the Tuesday weeklies on April 18th. For some reason, it took them almost a month to add the Thursday. That launched on May 11th. And then once those two launched, it seems like the game really changed for a lot of people out there in SPX land. All of a sudden, you had products that were going off every day. And that just changed the game for a lot of people out there. We've had a lot of guests on our network come in really extolling the virtues of these zero DTE for a variety of reasons. They offer very limited swings at the bat. They're effectively almost like a little mini SPX binary, which is always kind of fun. And of course, there's no residual position. It expires at the end of the day. And for a lot of people, that is refreshing. Not to have any lingering positions after the close is a little bit of a easier way to sleep at night for a lot of people out there. So for a variety of reasons, people have flocked into these. I looked at some numbers here before the show. Last year, SPX weeklies, they traded a total of 247 million contracts last year. That was in 2021, not even last year, 2021. Nearly 5 million weeklies were already going up every week last year in the SPX. So it was obviously a hot contract. The ADV was 981,000 contracts. So 981,000 weeklies out there, 72% of total SPX options trading volume. That's what SIBO said back in April of last year when they launched these new additions to the space. Fast forward to the end of the year, things have changed a little bit. As you might imagine, the numbers are crazy. We were just crunching them with Scott Nations for the Pro Q&A a few minutes ago. And just today, 2.1 million contracts have traded in SPX. We looked at the top 20 most active contracts. 19 of them were expiring today. Only one of the top 20 listeners in SPX, which is an enormous institutional product, was expiring any other day than today. If you expand that to the top 40, I think there were 4. So 36 of the top 40 most active contracts in SPX are all expiring today. If you're new to the options world, that may not resonate with you, but I started my career in the SPX pit. This is one of the foremost institutional products on the planet. So the notion that not only that retail are clearly flocking into SPX now to trade these zero DTE products, but also clearly a large number of funds and institutions are doing so as well. It is just mind-blowing to me. It was never really the use case for which SPX was designed, but that's where we find ourselves out there at the end of the year. The numbers coming in for the end of the year from SIBO, total index volume, 715 million contracts. So that was a new record for them. Let's see. The ADV was 2.2 million contracts. Let's see. The ADV for SPX options with 0 days to expiry increased 83% throughout 2022 and comprised 43% of overall SPX volume just in December. So again, that's straight from the horse's mouth. Those are the numbers we're seeing from SIBO. They don't list the exact volume for zero DTE contracts. I'll have to go dig and see if I can find that number. Maybe we'll put it on next week's show or something. But in general, Dan, a long way around to saying this is a heck of a lot of paper, and it is changing the way people engage with this storied product in a very fascinating way. I'm hard-pressed to think, Dan, I've been doing this for a little while. I'm hard-pressed to think of another as rapid transformation in the use case of a product as we've seen in SPX. Do you, A, agree with that? SPX has kind of changed almost overnight in the way people use it. And B, can you think of anything else that even comes closer?
No. I have to agree with you on this, despite the fact that I really don't want to. But no, I have to agree with you on this. Like when we went from teenies to nickels, I mean, that was kind of forced, but everybody was like, oh, okay, and it just seemed like an adjustment. When we went from nickels to the penny pilot program, like they ramped that out slowly. When we went to VIX options, ramped that up slowly. When we went to weeklies, like it took a while. But this has just been like massive, fast transformation. Yes, I'm in. Boom, go. And the volume, I can't say literally exploded because it's so annoying when people say literally when they don't mean literally, but holy cow, it really exploded.
It literally exploded. I will say it. It blew up in my face. I still have the burn, Stan. It's crazy town out there. But the other fascinating thing to me, I mentioned I cut my teeth in the SPX, and expiration day used to be a thing people planned for weeks in advance. You started rolling way ahead of time to get away from expiration. You didn't want to have any lingering positions or much really on at all going into expirations. People kind of ran away from it. And now here it is, Dan, a decade or two later, everyone's running towards expiration. They can't get enough. Every day has to be expiration day. It's a crazy transformation. If you had told me this at the beginning of last year, I would have said you were a madman. But then I say that to you every day, so that's not new. But still, just the transformation out there. I'm still kind of coming to grips with it, Dan.
Yeah, it is quite a thing. And, I mean, it kind of gets me excited because you know why? And we've talked about this a lot, like average traders and investors have been getting smarter, a lot smarter. And like this is just another example of it, is that we've seen in the volume more and more and more and more option trading. And, it's not just goofballs trying it out once, because you run out of goofballs at some point. It's people who try it and really apply themselves, put in the time and effort and cost to learn how to do it and stick with it and make money at it. And they're smart enough now that they're able to embrace these new things right away as soon as they happen.
I know, Dan, you can never run out of goofballs. There's always another goofball around the corner. Just waiting out there. But, these aren't without controversy. Like I said, we just had our pro Q&A with Scott, and he's no big fan of these things. He thinks they're pretty much just blatant gambling out there. There's not much real economic use case for these products out there. You said you're kind of a fan of them, though, Dan. So why do you take the other side? Why do you like these zero DTE contracts?
Well, I mean, I talk a lot about the use case for options just to, just to make the point that they are like a very important risk management tool. But, let's just be fair, call a spade, as they say. I mean, I don't trade options, altruistically to use them for their intended use case. I'm a trader. I'm trying to take money out of the market. So it doesn't matter to me if there's a use case. Scott's a super smart dude. I think I'd love to talk to him about it because I think I disagree a little bit with him on this, but while I think there is a use case, I don't care if there's a use case. It's a really great trading vehicle.
All right, so someone shows up down at the MTM compound in Frankfurt. They knock on the door and they say, Mr. Passarelli, teach me, guide me in the ways of all things zero DTE. What do you do? What is your first step? Maybe we'll start with, because I'm sure a lot of people out there listening to this, they're very new to the world of options. Who do you recommend these zero DTE products for? Who should be trading these to start with? And then B, what are the use cases you like to use them for?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, I would say that it's really not for newbies. But I don't know. I mean, on the other hand, I've been sort of relaxing some of these rigid, possibly old-fashioned rules a little bit lately, because I mean, even if there is somebody brand new to options and you just, you want to get good at one thing first, it's not a horrible thing to get good at first. It's got its own set of nuances, which for an experienced trader can be a fair amount to wrap your head around. But, newbies don't really know any different. So they're learning any nuances that they have to learn, just like they'd have to learn nuances for trading leaps or 1 month options or 1 week options or straddles or whatever. So, I'd recommend them. I'm not trying to twist anybody's arm and talk them into doing anything, but I would say it's a very reasonable and noble thing for anybody to trade who's interested in making money as a short-term trader.
Yeah, I tend to lean towards that. Maybe not for the complete novice. I mean, the barrier to entry is low. That's why they're attractive to a lot of people, because it's a one-day swing at the bat. So it's not going to cost you a ton. On the flip side, if you're selling these, you're not going to collect a ton. But for the novice coming in, maybe that is what's attracting them to this, the fact that it's a very low barrier to entry. It's a cheap swing at the bat. But I would emphasize for a lot of people that it is what it is. I think there is a bit of a gambling use case to these out there because they are very short dated contracts. So the first thing I would say to anyone considering trading these is you have to be very comfortable with a very high gamma option, because it's all expiration day. It's nothing but gamma. Vol is a meaningless concept. All gamma, all decay. If you don't know what that is, then you probably should stay away for a little bit. And also, these are effectively, like I said earlier in the show, they're kind of like mini binaries in the SPX. They don't have a 0-100 payout, but the short duration nature of them makes them effectively like a binary. So you have to be very comfortable with a high gamma option. You're going to see a lot of swings, and also something analogous to a binary payout. If you're not comfortable with either of those things, or you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, then I would say zero DTE contracts, probably not for you. Go back, check out our archives, do a little bit of learn about gamma, obviously. I think we have some episodes there about binaries in there as well. If not, we used to do a show, I do believe it's still on the feed, even though it is in the archive status now, called the Futures Options Roundtable, where we did with a firm called Nadex, which is all about binaries. So we did a lot of binary education there as well. So if you want to check out those, feel free if you want to learn a little bit more about all things binaries. Dan, would you say that's a pretty good starting point? People have to be comfortable and knowledgeable of high gamma options, and also comfortable with the effectively binary nature of the payouts here?
Yeah, I think getting comfortable with with high gamma options is one of the things that's tricky for experienced option traders who have never traded zero DTEs. But like back to the conversation about novices, they don't know any different, so it's fine. As far as comparing them to binaries, I'd say yes and no. I mean, there is a strategy that I use that is, well, I call it zero DTE, but it's really, I put it on typically on Tuesday afternoons in the last half hour of the day, and I just let it run through Wednesday. Today, my rule is I don't touch it. I just let nature take its course. Today, I actually sort of broke that rule, because the market was looking a little bit heavy, and took a small profit just to prevent, a bigger problem, because it is it's credit. It's a wing spread, so there's higher loss than the profit potential. So I just got out of it. So, I guess you can do that with binaries too, right? You can get in them and then choose to get out of them. I don't know if it's much of more of a binary thing than anything else. It's just so fast that it kind of feels that way. I guess I would say.
Yeah, it's analogous to binary. It's not quite the same thing. You're right, but it has the short duration of it, which makes it kind of feel like a binary. You're right. So Dan, they show up down there in Frankfurt, hat in hand. They knock on the door. They say, "Please, sir, teach me how to trade the zero DTE." What is your usual go-to? What is your usual use case for these? Someone comes in, they're starting to trade these. Is it just straight up be buying some basic verticals to start, or selling them? How do you go about easing people into zero DTE trade?
My favorite thing with them is iron condors and credit spreads. And some of those I have a little bit of an elaborate system.
Wow, 4 legs? Why like the 4-leg trade?
Well, you get the advantage. Basically I'm doing a credit spread on the downside, but I'm also doing a credit spread to the upside. So I'm collecting double premium, and worst case scenario, only one of them is going to lose, but I get to double dip and collect a premium on both of them. And these are some of those rare ones where I do them really far out of the money. So it's a fairly high probability of winning, which, notwithstanding that we've talked about these on things similar to that on past shows and liken them to a time bomb, if I would have called them the time bomb strategy. But I guess that's the interesting thing about the word gambling. Like our card counters, gamblers, the card counter would say, no, absolutely not. And I would say, no, they're absolutely not. But, there's still a statistical nature to things. Even card counters are, they don't win every session they play. They just have an edge over the casino, just like any good trader has an edge over the casino. So, yeah, when I put these trades on, I am taking a chance, and I may win and I may lose, and I know that going in. But it's a very educated, statistically sound bet, and so therefore I wouldn't call it gambling. I just wouldn't.
Like, I'm looking here right now while you're talking to see what some of the hot trades that are going up out there right now for the zero DTE. So it looks like we got some short put spreads going up, and it does seem like I agree with you as well that I think the risk mitigated nature is the best way to approach these, which is spreads. Listen, that's the best way to go. These are very high gamma contracts. You are limited in the duration in terms of they can only move against you for a day. So that does protect you a little bit, but still these things are very high gamma. They can swing around. So going out there naked just with a straight up individual option, probably not the way to go. Dan's talking about multi-leg strategies out there in Iron Condor. Obviously you're doing effectively one strangle versus another. So there's a lot of different ways you can cut it, but things that have a mitigated approach in terms of the risk. If you're selling premium, you're buying another contract to make sure the worst doesn't come to pass. Vice versa, if you're buying things, that is definitely the way to approach things out there with these zero DTE contracts. Dan, you're not the first person I've heard extolling the virtues of the iron condors out here. A lot of people like flies in these zero DTEs as well, which to me, when you first say that out loud, and I know when first people started talking about this last summer, I said they were crazy people. Like, why would you want to do a fly with 1 day to go, right? But that seems to be a use case that is growing in popularity out there as well. Have you dabbled in that at all, sir?
No, I don't like the flies as much as the iron condors, and some of it's, psychological. But you will run into trouble more often with flies than you will with iron condors, just because the break evens are closer to the money. And I'm usually doing it on the indexes, specifically the NDX, and you can just get too much trendiness in a day on that particular index sometimes. So I prefer iron condors myself.
Well, this is kind of our introductory episode to zero DTE. Given the trends out there, listeners, millions of contracts going up a day now in these products. We will return to them in the very near future, talk about some more concrete strategies you can utilize in these. I kind of wanted to just wet your whistle, give you a bit of an appetizer here, listeners. I know for a lot of you, I see the numbers. I know a lot of you joined very recently even to the show. And so maybe even these concepts are a little bit new and foreign to you out there. So we're going to ease you in here. Again, just because everyone and their mother and their grandmother is doing doesn't mean you have to go out there and sling them yourself, listeners. But something you should be cognizant of. This is clearly a trend that is probably here to stay. I guess it depends who you talk to as well. I know Scott, he was saying he thinks maybe this is a short-term fad and it's mostly gambling and people are going to blow out and these numbers are going to go back down. So maybe that'd be a good question of the week for you folks as well. Do you think this trend is here to stay, or is this maybe just a short duration trend? If you think it is, obviously the indexes, more indexes are going to offer these contracts. Other exchanges are not idiots. They see the money that SIBO is making off these single day contracts, so they will try to follow suit. The question we get a lot now are we going to see single day contracts in your Apples and your Teslas? And for right now, listeners, the answer is no, for a variety of reasons. I put this exact question to the CEO of the OCC back last summer when these products were just starting to kick off at the OIC conference. And he mentioned that, of course, the indexes are a much safer way and a safer place to do these contracts for a variety of reasons. You don't have all the corporate actions and the individual risks, takeovers, dividends, earnings, etc., that you see in single names. So that's one of the reasons why OCC is just not ready to do it yet. They have to find a way to model all that stuff behind the scenes. And also, the flip side of that is that SPX is cash settled. So that makes it nice. At the end of the day, all you do is change hands for some cash. There's no shares changing hands. We don't really have cash settled equity options in the US yet. So in terms of your Apples and your big names you want to trade. So there has been some talk about maybe launching those. And then maybe from there, maybe we will see some zero DTE. But there's still a lot that has to go on behind the scenes before you can go out and sling your zero DTE iron condors in Apple. Dan, is that your thought as well when it comes to zero DTE and the big names everybody trades outside of SPX, that it's going to be a while?
I think it will be a while, though I wouldn't be surprised if they just sort of step it up a little bit. And I think that once there's a crack in the dike or whatever, it can just really, it can really just explode. It can really just turn into a flood of, let's keep with the same analogy, a flood of, zero DTE listing on the liquid stocks like your Apples and like your Amazons and Teslas and such.
That music means we come to the end of Dan's tortured liquid metaphors for today. Before we go, Mr. Dan, if they want more scintillating fluid-based metaphors from you, where should they go? What should they do?
Oh, I'm full of metaphors. I'm full of something. Make your way on over to markettaker.com and hit us up. Join us. Join our community free. Our chat room is free for the time being right now, and we'd love to see you. So come on over, markettaker.com, 2 T's in a row.
MarketTaker.com is the place to go. We got to get on out of here. But hey, a pro bonus for all you pro listeners out there right now. I have to go speak at a conference here in Chicago next week on Education Wednesday. So Dan and I are going to record next week's episode right now. So you folks get it in your ear holes right away. No waiting for you. The rest of you folks will get it on the network next week. Remember, if you want to get access to all that fun early content, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Otherwise, stay safe out there. Pro members, we'll see you right away. Otherwise, we'll see you back next week. Another episode of Options Bootcamp.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.